Used to be we were worried about our kids, if they wandered off at the mall.
Mhm.
But now it's like there's this whole digital mall out there,
Right.
and it's open all the time.
Yeah. And it's a lot harder to keep track of where they're going.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it can feel like the Wild West out there
Yeah,
sometimes.
it can for sure. I mean, it's a whole new world of challenges.
It is.
And honestly, I'm not always sure we're as prepared as we could be for it.
Exactly. That's why we're doing this deep dive today, all about digital violence.
Right.
We're going to be talking about everything from cyberbullying to some of the more insidious things like doxing,
Mm-hmm.
even things like AI-generated harassment.
That's right. All the new stuff.
We've got some really great research to dive into from Dr. Aidan Hirschfield.
Oh, yeah.
He's a media psychologist who was featured on the Something Was Wrong podcast.
I love that podcast.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
And we've got some pretty eye-opening statistics from the Pew Research Center and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
It's going to be intense, but it's important stuff.
It is. And this is knowledge that we need,
Yeah.
especially if we want to help protect ourselves and the younger generations.
Absolutely.
Let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What do we mean when we even say digital violence? Because it seems like it goes way beyond kids just being mean to each other online.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Digital violence is really any act of aggression or harassment or abuse
Okay.
that takes place online.
So it's a pretty broad term.
It is because it encompasses so many different types of behaviors.
Yeah, like we're talking about cyberbullying, but also things like revenge porn, doxing, where somebody's information is shared publicly
Right.
to cause them harm.
Exactly, with malicious intent.
Cyberstalking, impersonation, extortion, even online grooming.
It's scary stuff.
It is.
The reality is that somebody can inflict a lot of harm just sitting behind a keyboard.
And the impact can be just as damaging as physical violence, too.
It can.
Right.
Absolutely. Imagine somebody sharing your most private photos
Oh, gosh.
without your consent or just being relentlessly harassed online. I mean, the emotional distress, the reputational damage,
Right.
and even the fear for your own safety that can go along with that, it can be devastating.
It's a reminder that, the online world does have real-world consequences.
It really does.
And the numbers are pretty grim. 2/3 of adults under 30
Oh.
have experienced online harassment, according to the Pew Research Center.
That's a staggering number.
It is.
And the research suggests that those aged 18 to 29 are experiencing the most severe forms
Oh, wow.
of abuse.
Yeah.
So if you have kids or grandkids in that age group,
Yeah.
it's incredibly likely that they've already encountered this.
It's hard to even grasp what that really means for a lot of us.
I know.
In that 45 to 60 age range.
Yeah.
I mean, we grew up when bullying happened face to face, not through a screen.
It's a whole different ballgame now. These kids have their entire social lives playing out online. Their reputation, their sense of self-worth.
Right.
It's all tied up in this digital world.
And when that becomes toxic,
Yeah.
it's got to be really hard.
When that world becomes toxic, the effects can be profound.
No wonder that we're seeing a rise in anxiety and depression among young people.
Yeah, there's a definite link there.
And it's not just limited to young adults either.
Right.
Almost half of all teenagers report being cyberbullied.
Wow, that's a lot.
And that's everything from name-calling, spreading rumors, to more serious threats.
It is a lot.
And I'm guessing those kinds of attacks can leave some pretty deep scars.
They absolutely can. Cyberbullying can have long-term effects on self-esteem, mental health,
Right.
and even academic performance. What's even more concerning is that digital abuse is often linked to other forms of abuse.
Really?
A study funded by the Department of Justice found that 84%
Wow.
of cyber dating abuse victims also reported psychological dating abuse.
Wow.
More than half experienced physical dating violence as well.
So it's not just happening in isolation.
It's not.
It's part of this larger pattern.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that as we move forward, because things get even more complicated when we bring artificial intelligence into the equation.
AI, that's where things start to feel really futuristic for me.
Yeah.
Even as someone who considers himself pretty comfortable with technology.
Right. AI can seem like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it's very much a part of our reality now.
It is.
And it's playing an increasingly significant role in the world of digital violence.
So before we dive into that,
Yeah.
can we break it down for those of us
Yeah.
who might not be so familiar with AI?
Absolutely.
Can you explain it in a way that even your grandma could understand?
I would say think of generative AI.
Okay.
You know, the type we're primarily talking about here, as this super-powered version of those autocomplete features you see on your phone or your computer. It can take massive amounts of data, like text or images or code, and then use that data to create new content.
So it's not actually thinking for itself.
Right.
It's just incredibly good at mimicking.
It's like a really sophisticated parrot
Okay.
that can mimic human language, but doesn't truly understand the meaning behind the words.
So where does the danger come in then?
Well, the danger lies in the potential for misuse. We're talking about things like deepfakes,
Okay.
automated harassment campaigns, the spread of disinformation on a scale we've never seen before.
Deepfakes, that's where somebody's face is superimposed onto somebody else's body in a video.
Right.
And they can be incredibly realistic.
So realistic that it's becoming really difficult to tell what's real and what's fake.
Wow.
And this technology is being used to create really harmful content. The most comprehensive study on deepfakes found that 96% of deepfakes online were pornographic.
96%.
96%. And that's a massive red flag when you consider the link to child exploitation.
That is a disturbing statistic.
It is. And it points to a very real concern when you combine the accessibility of deepfake technology with the rise in child sexual abuse material online.
Yeah.
It paints a very bleak picture.
It feels like we're entering uncharted territory.
We are, and it's raising some profound questions about how we regulate this technology.
Yeah.
And ensure that it's used for good, not for harm.
I think that's a perfect place to pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
And it's definitely some heavy stuff.
It is.
But we've only just scratched the surface.
That's right. We've got more to come.
We've been talking about the dark side of the digital world, this whole landscape of digital violence.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get overwhelmed by it all.
I can understand that it can be pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, but I think it's important to remember there is hope.
There is absolutely.
You know, there are things being done to combat this, both here in the U.S. and internationally.
That's right. There are.
So what kind of initiatives are we talking about here? Is it just trying to keep up with technology and create new laws as things evolve?
Well, it's partly that, but it's also about shifting our mindset.
Okay.
Creating a culture where digital violence is taken seriously.
So it's not just about playing catch up with the technology.
Right.
It's about changing how we even think about online behavior.
Exactly. And that involves education advocacy, holding both individuals and tech companies accountable.
So let's talk about the legal side of things first.
Okay.
Are there laws in place to protect people from digital violence?
There are, and they're constantly evolving as the technology advances.
Okay.
Here in the U.S., we have the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act.
Okay.
COPPA was enacted back in 1998, and it's designed to protect children under 13 by setting rules for how websites can collect and use their personal information.
1998 feels like a lifetime ago.
I know, right?
In the tech world.
It does.
So is COPPA even relevant anymore?
Well, it's definitely showing its age, especially with the rise of social media platforms that weren't even around when it was created.
Right, like Facebook.
Exactly. It wasn't a thing. And that's why there's been this push for more up-to-date legislation.
Like what?
Well, there's the Revising Existing Procedures on Reporting via Technology Act.
Oh, my goodness.
Thankfully, we usually just call it the Report Act.
The Report Act, okay.
Much easier.
What does that one focus on?
It's specifically aimed at improving the reporting of crimes involving the online sexual exploitation of children.
Okay.
It strengthens penalties for online service providers who fail to report those crimes.
Okay.
And it tries to limit liability for those who do.
So it's trying to encourage these tech companies to be more proactive.
Right.
About protecting children.
Exactly.
What about initiatives that are aimed at protecting adults?
Well, we're seeing more movement on that front, too.
Right.
For example, on a global scale, there's the Digital Services Act from the European Union.
Okay.
And it aims to prevent illegal and harmful activities online.
Like what kind of activities?
Everything from hate speech and harassment to the spread of disinformation.
Okay.
The sale of illegal goods.
Right.
It's a comprehensive approach to making the internet a safer place.
Sounds promising, but I imagine it's got to be a challenge to enforce these laws in such a vast and ever-changing online world.
You're absolutely right. It's a constant game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
As soon as you address one issue, another one pops up.
And then you've got AI.
Exactly.
Which adds a whole other layer.
A whole new layer of complexity to the legal landscape.
AI really feels like the Wild West right now.
It does.
Of the digital world.
Yeah.
Are there even any laws specifically addressing AI?
That's the tricky part. We're still in the very early stages of figuring out
Okay.
how to regulate AI effectively.
So we're behind.
We are a little bit.
Right.
As of now, 28 states have enacted some kind of AI-related legislation.
Okay.
But there's no comprehensive federal regulation yet.
So it's a patchwork of laws across the country.
Exactly. And that can make enforcement very difficult.
It sounds like it.
But, even with all these efforts, legislation is only part of the solution.
Right.
We also need to talk about the fact that many victims of digital violence simply don't report it.
Why is that? I mean, it seems like the logical first step.
Right.
If you're being harassed or abused online.
You would think so, but there are a lot of reasons why people don't report it.
Okay.
Sometimes victims feel ashamed or embarrassed, especially when it involves something like revenge porn.
Right.
Imagine having your most intimate photos shared without your consent.
Oh, that's awful.
It can feel incredibly violating, and there's often a fear of judgment or blame.
I can see how somebody would hesitate to come forward in that situation.
Absolutely.
But if we're not reporting these crimes, how can we hold these perpetrators accountable?
It's a vicious cycle, because that silence only empowers the abusers.
Yeah.
And there's often this fear of not being believed.
Right.
Or even being blamed for what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Victim blaming is a huge problem, and it plays a significant role in silencing victims.
Yeah.
They end up feeling like it's their fault,
Right.
like they somehow brought it upon themselves.
It's heartbreaking, and it just perpetuates the problem,
It does, absolutely.
doesn't it?
We need to create a culture where victims feel safe coming forward,
Yeah.
where they know they'll be taken seriously and supported.
That's right.
We need to challenge this notion of victim blaming.
Mm-hmm.
Create a space where people can speak out without fear of judgment.
So where do we even begin? What can we as individuals do to protect ourselves and our loved ones from digital violence?
It starts with knowledge.
Okay.
We need to educate ourselves and the people in our lives about the different forms of digital violence, how to recognize the signs,
Mm-hmm.
what steps to take if it happens.
So it's about being proactive, not reactive.
Exactly.
Got it.
And that goes for adults as well as children. We all need to be more aware
Right.
of the risks and take steps to protect ourselves.
What kind of steps are we talking about here?
Well, for starters, we need to be mindful of what we share online. Think twice before posting personal information, especially details that could be used to identify your location
Okay.
or contact you offline.
So things like your home, address, your phone number, your work schedule.
Exactly.
That's basic information,
Right.
but it can be used against you.
It can in the wrong hands. And be cautious about accepting friend requests
Oh,
from people you don't know or clicking on links from unfamiliar sources.
okay.
Those links could lead to malware or phishing scams designed to steal your personal information.
It's amazing how easy it is to fall victim to some of these scams.
It is.
They're getting more sophisticated all the time.
They are, and it's not just about protecting ourselves.
Right.
It's about advocating for change.
Okay.
We can petition tech companies to design safer platforms with better reporting systems.
Right.
Stronger content moderation.
So it's about using our voices to demand better protections.
Mm-hmm.
Hold these companies accountable.
Exactly. What about reporting mechanisms?
Yeah. If we do see something,
Yes.
how do we report it effectively?
That's a great question. If you see something concerning on social media, report it to the platform. Most platforms have clear guidelines on how to do this.
Okay.
You can also report instances of digital violence to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children,
Right.
especially if it involves child sexual abuse material. And if necessary, you can contact the FBI.
So there are multiple avenues
There are.
for reporting these crimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of knowing where to go,
Mm-hmm.
what steps to take.
And I think it's also important to remember there's no shame in seeking help.
Right.
If you or someone you know is experiencing digital violence,
Right.
the National Domestic Violence Hotline has a wealth of information and support.
Okay, yeah.
And there are organizations like Right to Be and Thorn that specifically focus
Okay.
on online harassment and abuse.
So there's help out there.
There is.
It's important to reach out if you need it.
Absolutely.
Sounds like prevention is really key.
It is.
What can we do to educate ourselves and our loved ones about these risks?
Digital literacy programs are a great resource.
Okay.
There are programs designed for people of all ages, from young children to senior citizens.
Okay.
These programs teach people how to navigate the online world safely and responsibly, how to identify red flags,
Mm-hmm.
how to protect their personal information.
So there's always something new to learn,
Always.
no matter what your age.
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing process because this is a digital landscape that's constantly evolving.
Exactly. We need to be lifelong learners when it comes to digital literacy. The more we know, the better equipped we'll be to protect ourselves and create a safer online environment for everyone.
We've covered so much ground here.
We have.
But it's clear there's still a lot to learn and a lot to do when it comes to digital violence. I've got to admit, it is a little bit unsettling to realize just how vulnerable we are in this digital age.
It is eye-opening, isn't it? I mean, we tend to think of the internet as the separate world, but it really is deeply intertwined with our everyday lives. And that means that the consequences of online behavior can be very real and very serious.
For a lot of us in that 45 to 60 age range,
Right.
it feels like we're trying to learn a new language.
I understand that.
The digital world is changing so quickly,
It is.
and it's tough to keep up with all the lingo and the nuances of online interaction.
That's a valid point. I mean, it is like we're constantly playing catch up, trying to understand the rules of a game that's always changing.
Right.
But the good news is it's never too late to learn.
That is good news.
It is.
So if somebody is listening right now in that age group,
Yeah.
feeling a little overwhelmed by all this information, where should they even begin?
I would say start with curiosity. Don't be afraid to ask questions even if they seem really basic.
Right.
Talk to your kids or your grandkids about their online experiences. You might be surprised by what you learn.
It's about opening up those lines of communication.
Exactly.
Even if it feels a little uncomfortable at first.
It might, but it's worth it. And don't underestimate the power of your own experience. You know, you might not be a digital native, but you do have this wealth of wisdom and life experience that can be incredibly valuable in navigating all of this.
So it's about finding that balance
It is.
between respecting the expertise of those younger generations and sharing our own insights.
Absolutely. And it's about advocating for change.
Right.
Use your voice to support legislation that promotes online safety. Hold those tech companies accountable for creating safer platforms.
We're not powerless in this digital world.
We're not.
We can make a difference.
We absolutely can. We can educate ourselves. We can support each other. And we can work together to create a safer and more inclusive online environment for everyone.
That's a message I think we can all get behind.
I agree.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into this complex world of digital violence. It's been a heavy but essential conversation.
I agree. It's not always easy to talk about these things, but it's really crucial that we bring these issues to light and work together to find solutions.
And if this episode has sparked your interest or even your concern, we encourage you to continue the conversation.
Yes.
Share this information with your family and friends.
Please do.
Reach out to the resources that we've mentioned and stay engaged in this fight
Yes.
for a safer online world.
Because together we can make a difference. Remember, knowledge is power.
That's right.
And by staying informed and engaged, we can empower ourselves and those around us to navigate the digital world safely and responsibly.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next week with another exploration of a topic that's shaping our world. Until then, stay curious, stay connected, and don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more in-depth discussions that matter.